Hello, everyone. It's Nicole from HBCU 20 by 20. We're extremely excited for part 2 of our conversation with the Chicago Bears. Today, we'll be talking about the operations behind football and more specifically, the operations at the Chicago Bears. We have 3 panelists that are joining us today who will speak about their personal and professional journeys, what they've learned along the way, and hey, how you'll hopefully get to be in their place one day. So I'm going to start on my left because I see Carla, but Carla, do you mind just taking some time just to introduce yourself, what you do and what you do with the Chicago Bears?
My name is Carla Suber. I am a director of wellness for the Chicago Bears. I'm a proud HBCU grad. I graduated from Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. My primary role is to help support players, coaches, football operations staff, and even people on the business side in their total mental wellness. And that comes in a couple of different ways, through therapy, through referrals to therapy, through education, doing different workshops and trainings. And that is my role on the operations side, and I help support the business side as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Next, I'd like to highlight Andre because I see you next.
Thank you and good morning to everyone. My name is Andre Tucker. I'm the head athletic trainer here for the Chicago Bears. My main role in a nutshell is I take care of all the medical needs, both mainly for the players, but also for the support staff and their families. So anything from a medical standpoint, whether it's orthopedic or internal, I help assist and guide to get the players what they need.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And last, we'll head over to Sam and ask the same thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Hi there. Super excited to be here today. I'm also a proud HBCU grad. I went to Jackson State University. And here at the Bears, I'm one of our 2 senior national scouts. And so in this role, I'm responsible for evaluating all the players on the eastern half of the country. And as scouts, what we do is try to gain an understanding of how a player is going to be on the field as well as a teammate and in the locker room, and just kind of be able to communicate a clear picture of how somebody projects to how they can help our team.
Thank you so much for that. So I'd like to just dive in and ask my first question for each of you is just, how did your educational or work experience prepare you for what you're doing today? And we can start with Sam.
There we go. So for me, I was a marketing major while I was at Jackson State, and then I also played on the football team. But I don't necessarily think that it was the academics or even the football experience that helped prepare me for this role. I think the biggest thing was just learning how to work independently, learning how to organize my thoughts and being able to balance and prioritize the professional side, the social side, personal life, and really learning all those things. And that was something that, college was really huge for me, and being able to learn just how to have that balance.
Thank you for that. I'd like to ask Carla the same question.
Well, I was actually an English major in undergrad and had aspirations to go to law school. I ended up teaching, and then as I was teaching, I became interested in psychology, and just kind of by nature of some of the students that were being placed in my class. And I feel like my teaching background and my clinical background actually is the perfect combination for this job, because so many people in this space, this is maybe their first time with therapy, or this may be their first time understanding about how stress impacts you emotionally. So I do spend a lot of time educating and teaching clinical information. So I feel like that kind of helped me be able to kind of marry both of my skill sets. And it's also fun because I get to do it in a different kind of way. I'm not necessarily standing up in front of like a board. It can be in a conversation in passing or in front of the whole team, or maybe just a couple guys pull me to the side, or even sometimes Sam and the scouts pull me in and kind of pick my brain. So I feel like I'm always teaching. And so that's been the two things that kind of helped me get to where I am.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'll definitely looking forward to learning a little bit more also throughout this conversation, just how you make that happen, how you actualize that. And next we'll go to Andre.
Yeah, so my role was a little bit unconventional, untraditional. I had no idea going into college what I wanted to do. So I remember like it was yesterday going in and talking to my guidance counselor. She goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I have no idea." She said, "What are you passionate about?" I said, "I love sports and I love to help people." So she said, "What about athletic training?" And, looking back, the rest is history. So in athletic training, just to explain, some folks don't know what an athletic trainer is. You're kind of the jack of all trade. You're a little bit of medicine. You're also a little bit of prevention, rehab, and on-field evaluation. So my job is fun. I'm not always in the office 9 to 5. I also get to go on the field and get to travel with the team. And I tell people wherever the players are, we're right behind them, supporting them with whatever they need. So I was able to figure it out early, but I really didn't know until I got into college what I wanted to do. So
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I think at HBCU 20 by 20, we often tell students, you go to college when you're 17, 18, 19, you're pretty young, it's hard to determine what you want to do for the rest of your life. So I appreciate you sharing that. And while I have you spotlighted, I'd like to ask you just our next question, which is, what's the toughest part of your job?
So toughest part for me, and I've learned just over the years, is communication. So for me, I talk to coaches, I talk to doctors, and I also talk to support staff. So that's three different subgroups that understand your information differently. So having the ability to speak their language, but also get my point across where it's effective for them to understand exactly what I'm trying to get done, especially in my role. So I think learning that over time is understanding your audience and how you can communicate with them, but in a format where they understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you for sharing that. And, I think that communication, they often say is a key to success. So knowing that you have to communicate with those different subgroups of people just to get one job accomplished, it does sound tough, but it seems like you have it under control.
Yeah, I think so. Lots of practice.
Next, I'd like to ask Sam the same question. What's the toughest part of your job?
Yeah, for me, I kind of go back and forth with the travel and being away from home and, trying to find ways to tap back in. But I think probably the toughest part of the actual job is just remaining confident in myself and in my own ability to evaluate players because there's no right answer. And so there's times that my boss might disagree with me or uh, 5 or 6 other people in the room might disagree with my opinion on the player. And I have to be able to maintain the confidence and say, hey, this is what I see. This is why I believe what I believe, even though everybody else is telling you that you're wrong. So just being able to have that kind of confidence, I think it's just developed over the years. And the more time you spend doing it, the better that becomes.
And I was going to ask that, it's just, how do you gain that confidence? Or is it through like years of experience? Is it something you practice? Like, do you practice in the mirror before you go into the meeting? Like, this is what I mean, and I mean what I say. Like, what is that like for you?
For me, I think it's just falling back on the fact that, hey, I put a lot of time into this. I did the work. Just believe your eyes, trust your eyes. You've been right before. And you know what? If you're not right this time, that's okay. You have to just believe and understand that you're going to miss some. but you're going to be right more often than not. You'd rather be wrong on what you actually believe than to change your opinion to try to say what somebody else wants to hear, and then you come back and find out you were right in the first place. So it's just understanding that level of, hey, I'm going to be wrong sometimes, and that's okay.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that there's a large lesson in that is applicable to life, just the willingness to understand that you're not always right, but then on the opposite end, being willing to learn so that the next time you are right. I think that there's a lot of different messages in what you just shared. So thank you for that. Next, I'd like to go to Carla. What's the toughest part of your job? I know that at HBCU 20 by 20, we recently did a study through our research institute and found that only 19% of those within our community have ever sought out any sort of resource to help them through any issues that they might have been having. So I'd like to know just what's the toughest part of your job? Do you see kind of any pushback in what you do? And I'll stop there and just see what you have to say.
I think definitely to your point, especially within our community, there's still a lot of stigma. Thankfully, within the athletic community, that stigma seems to be reducing. So I'm still fighting that battle every day. I probably don't get as much pushback as I got before, but there's always an education, because sometimes people think kind of mental health or mental health support is reactionary, and we actually try to do a lot of things on the preventative side early on, skill building, so you don't get to that crisis level or you don't get to that point where everything is falling apart. So that's probably still the toughest part of my job. I think now one of the tough parts is this role. Every team has one, and it became mandated in 2019. So, but there's still only 7 of us that are full-time. So those of us who are full-time embedded in there every day, it's kind of like we're building the plane while we're flying it. So that but at the same time, it's super, super exciting to know that you're kind of like setting a precedent. So that's probably the tough part, kind of building something that wasn't there, but it's also super exciting.
Thank you for sharing that. And while I have you on screen, I'd like to ask you our next question, which is, what's something you're proud of? I think that as I was listening to you discuss, we're kind of not doing things from a reactionary standpoint. We're also focused on preventative measures. I'm flying the plane while the plane is being built. Ooh, that sounds scary. But what's something you're proud of, just in your role and what you've been able to do, or just anything in general in your career?
I think I'm proud of, if I'm going to say what I'm probably most proud of, is that I'm proud of myself for taking the risk, because I took a lot of risk, just leaving a job, moving to Chicago and working with the Bears just purely as a consultant, and then to see kind of how it's grown. So I'm super proud of that. But I will say that within the organization, I'm proud of the relationships that I've been able to build. Like, these 2 dudes on the screen with me have been my biggest supporters, my biggest cheerleaders, and have just helped me be able to be like, no, you belong here and we got your back and we're going to help you build this out. So I think just being able to see how the Bears have embrace mental wellness, not just for players and support staff, but also for the organization as a whole, is something that I take a lot of pride in.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I love that you also talked about the importance of also kind of building community within the organization as well, but more so that risk taking. I think that to those watching, risk are the only way that you'll really be able to push the boundaries of what's possible or what you see as possible. So, kudos to you for that. That's really, really amazing. And where'd you move from to get to Chicago?
So I was actually working at the University of Illinois I had been there for 12 years. And I worked in athletics. And I decided I wanted to go back into full-time mental health. And so I literally walked away from a job that I had been in for 12 years, had an assistant director title, all that. And I was like, okay, you know what? I want to get back to the city. I got a shot just going in and doing stuff with the rookies once a week. Let me just do it. And so I actually left U of I and started working at Loyola, took like a significant pay cut, just kind of redid my whole life to kind of just take a risk. And I was like, well, worst case scenario, I got friends here. So if I need a couch to sleep on, I can sleep on it. But taking that risk on myself and betting on myself, and also knowing I had the support. And as I became more ingrained in the Bears organization and met Sam, met Dre, was able to kind of build those relationships that kind of helped validate why I needed to be there. And, as in football, we always say people stand on the table for you. I can say those dudes stood on the table for me to help me get to where I am. So it's about taking risk. It's about building those relationships. And sometimes you just got to do it. I mean, the worst case scenario was that I wouldn't work for the Bears, but I'd be in a great city and I still had a job. So I could just kind of start over.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a testimony. So I hope that those, again, that are watching know that it's okay to, like you said, bet on yourself. And also, it sounds like it was also, in a way, calculated risk, understanding,
Absolutely. It was definitely a calculated risk. And I think that's something that, sometimes we don't do because you feel like there's a certain pathway to get to certain things. And sometimes that pathway that's for somebody else is not for you. So it's kind of figuring out what your pathway is and trusting that process.
Thank you for sharing that. Next, I'll go to Sam and just ask the same thing. What's something you're proud of in your career or at the Chicago Bears that you've been able to accomplish?
Yeah, I'm really just proud to be here. Um, you know, when I first started in this league, there weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me um, doing these kind of roles. And as I've been here with the Bears, as I've been in the NFL, you're starting to see more brothers and sisters around the league that are, getting started in scouting, and just the way I've been able to, just by being here, being able to support others. And so there's young scouts here that will reach out to me for advice. There's young scouts from other teams all over the league that kind of look to me as a little bit of a mentor. And so I'm just proud of the fact that I've been put in a position to be able to help groom some of the people who are going to carry the league forward for, years to come.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that the saying, you're supposed to lift as you climb, sounds like a lot of what you've been able to do. And, I think that as the Chicago Bears continues to champion diversity and becoming more inclusive, it sounds like you all are doing an excellent job of just helping those also integrate, get into the organization, and also feel a part of the community. So that's amazing work too. And thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Next, I'd like to come to Andre and ask the same question. Just what's something you're proud of?
Probably the thing I'm most proud of is, so back in 2020 during the pandemic, I was assigned through the organization to be the lead to help us get through the pandemic. So creating an infectious disease program, figuring out a way to safely get everybody back in the building, and also navigating the team through the NFL season, really for the past two seasons, so 2020 and 2021. It was super challenging because as a head athletic trainer, that's a big responsibility within itself. But then to also have to figure out and build something from the ground up, because no one had, the blueprint or guideline and how to navigate through a pandemic. So being a part of that and knowing that you were instrumental in getting folks through in a safe and sound manner was was super rewarding. Plus, it got me to conversations and to meet people, you know, in the organization that I probably wouldn't have gotten an opportunity to talk to. So super proud of that.
And that is certainly commendable work. Like you said, working honestly from scratch without a blueprint and figuring out how to navigate not only workplace safety, but ensuring that the athletes were also safe. You know, that really is something to be proud of. And, you know, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your work. And yes. I think I'd like to stick with you for our next question as well. My next question is just in regards to, you know, how did you know you were taking the right career path? You know, I know that you said when you attended college, you weren't certain about what you wanted to do, but how did you know you were taking the right steps to get to where you are today?
I've learned pretty quick that I was passionate about really helping people. There's no more gratifying feeling than seeing a player get hurt, knowing that he's going to be out for a period of time, missing what he loves, and then you're an instrumental part in getting him back onto the field and playing at a high level. To this day, I still get excited about that piece of it. Knowing when a guy is back out there performing to the best of his ability, and you are part of the reason why, is that never gets old. So I'm super passionate about that piece and just helping people and connecting with people. Because if you look at it, you know, everyone on this call, it's a grind working in the NFL, especially on the football side. You put in a lot of hours. So you're not in it for the glam or the lights. You truly have to be passionate about what you're doing and being able to give back and help others.
Thank you for sharing that. And that certainly is important work. I think that, you know, when people put their all into their profession and put their all into their field and something goes wrong, you know, it's their hope that they do get back on the field. And, you know, I think that hearing that you take pride in being able to make sure that that does happen, that they do continue to live out their dreams, certainly is important. So thank you, you know, just for sharing that piece. I'd like to come to Sam and ask, you know, just the same question is, how did you know you were taking the right steps in the career pathway?
Yeah, I really didn't know. You know, like Andre said, I knew that I loved football. I knew that I was passionate about just remaining around the game. But I didn't know that, you know, being a scout, a college scout specifically, and being on the road, you know, 2/3 of the year, I didn't know that that's what I was going to be doing. And it wasn't until, you know, you kind of get steered into a direction and you start to enjoy things that you're good at. And so I knew I wanted to be around football. I knew I loved the game, but what was it going to be? Was it going to be coaching, scouting? You know, it could have been any number of things. And, you know, I just kind of got steered in this direction. And it wasn't until a few years in that I realized, hey, I made the right choice. This is where I want to be.
Thank you for sharing that as well. And I think that there's a lot of like gratification in knowing like, okay, I did the right thing, or I did what was best for me. And it sounds like that's what ultimately happened for you in the end.
Yes.
Next, I'd like to come to Carla and just ask the same question. Is just, you know, how did you know you were taking the right career path? I know that we got to hear a little bit of your journey from being an associate director at the University of Illinois to being a consultant to being in your role today. But just even in making those calculated risks, how did you know that this was it for you?
I didn't. I think the reassuring part for me as I was kind of taking these risks and kind of always having something in my back pocket, like just in case this didn't work out, I think it was the feedback that I would get from my former players at Illinois, a bunch of whom were in the league. And what's great now is that I get to see them when we play against them. And we have one guy from our Illinois team that's on the Bears now. I'm so excited. But that was because I really didn't know. I was just like, because I didn't know how to go about doing it. There's not like this clear, like, you do this, you do this, you do this. So what helped was my players. My players would be the ones like, you need to be doing this, like you fit in this space. And they're the ones that kind of like gave me I kind of like, whenever I felt like, I may not do this, or I may just, stay over here, I would get a text or a call like, hey, thinking about, how you could possibly do this, or this would be great. And so they gave me a lot of like reassurance that, okay, all right, you can do this, because there wasn't necessarily a clear pathway that I could see to get to the league. College is a little bit different, but getting to the pros, I wasn't really sure how to do that, but I was just able to kind of build those relationships and build those networks. And a lot of them had to do with my guys that kind of like supported me without realizing they were doing so.
I'm so happy that you brought up like the importance of network and, just also it sounds like allowing your work to speak for itself, and then naturally people talking about your work along the way.
Yeah.
So that it continues to build new and more opportunities. So, for those out there listening, your network is everything. We say your network is your net worth, but beyond that, your network is like what's possible and what's next for you. So thank you for sharing that. And also, while I have you on the screen, I'd like to move to our next question, which is just, why is mental wellness important within the organization? So whether it's for the athletes or for those who are in office, why is it important to you?
Because we're all human and we all experience stress, major life events, life transitions. We all went through the pandemic at the exact same time. We all witness all of the social unrest and social injustice that directly impacts our community, and that has an impact on everyone. So being able to address that a lot more globally in terms of, how can we support everyone, because everyone has some kind of reaction to a lot of the things that are happening in the world, or even if it's just things that are happening in their life. So I feel like that's the importance of mental wellness in an organization, because we're all human and we're all going to go through stuff at some point in time. So having the skills, having the resources to be able to tap into something to get that additional support you may need is crucial for all of us.
Thank you for providing that insight. Next, I'd like to come to Sam and just ask, just the same question, why is mental wellness important within the organization?
Yeah, there's no way I'll be able to answer this question nearly as well as Carla or even Dre. But to me, I think mental wellness is just important for just growth and development, right? Like if you don't have your mind right, it's going to be hard to do anything efficiently and really to work with others. If things are not right within yourself, you don't want to deal with anybody. So for me, I think that's where mental wellness becomes really, really important.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it taps back into that communication piece you were talking about a little bit earlier. Just, in order for you to even communicate, you have to be in a well place as well. So, I think that those are all interconnected ideas as well. So, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure it's just as of quality of what Carla and Andre will also share as well. But I'd like to come to Andre next and just ask the same question. Just why is mental wellness important? I know that you had an opportunity to talk about building out that blueprint during and even after the pandemic, but why is it important?
I think it's extremely important. This is something Carla and I talk about at length all the time. I mean, even checking in with each other. I don't think we do that enough. I talk to Carla, Carla talks to me, because if we aren't right, we can't support our staff, our players, ourselves, our family. So I think it has to start with you first, because then you can then take care of others. we also pride ourselves in knowing our players. Some of these players we know better than they know themselves. Because at times when you do need help, you don't even realize you need it until it's too late. So we try to be more proactive and realize that, you know what, something's a little off, body language is a little different, something's just not right. And we then try to intervene before it gets to the point where it's too late. Because typically these athletes are wired to try to self-regulate and figure things out on their own. And when they can't anymore, it's usually because they just have nowhere else to turn. And then it gets a little bit more difficult because it's probably been going on for so long. Now it's going to take a little longer to get them back to where they need to be. So I think it's super important.
Thank you for sharing that as well. And I love the fact that you all work together and even being able to point out, like you said, body language. You know, you can tell when someone wants to be somewhere and when they don't want to be somewhere. And I think that being able to connect with them and say, hey, we're here as support. Hey, we have resources. And, you know, you being able to work with Carla to make that possible is key, not only just to their individual success, but it seems like the organization's overall success as well.
For sure.
Thank you for that. I guess since you're on the screen, I'd like to stick with you. Is just what's been your biggest challenge today in your role?
It kind of goes back to what we talked about in communication and also being able to adapt. You know, there's change that's always happening in our environment. So being able to kind of almost foresee things before they come, that way you can plan and prepare. I teach my staff and students that come through here, and I tell them if you can prepare ahead of time for 80% of your day, that other 20% that we just don't know that's going to show up, you're not stressing, you're prepared for it to handle it with whatever comes your way. Usually things get stressful when you're not prepared for your day-to-day responsibilities, and then something that you didn't foresee coming also gets piled on top of what you're already responsible for. So I think the more you can prepare and think ahead, especially problem solving, the better off you will be because you'll take some of that stress load off of your plate. So plan, preparation, and communication, I think, are key.
Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I think that that's an excellent jewel just again in life for those watching. You can plan out 80% of your day, you know, and the other 20% you don't know about, at least 80% is planned out and the 20% you can deal with. So thank you for that. And that's a brilliant way to think about that. I'm going to apply that to my life as well. So thank you for that tip. I'd like to go to Carla next and just ask the same thing, is just what's been the biggest challenge to date for you in your role?
I think it's the ongoing process of reducing stigma that I think is still pretty challenging because so many people, especially in the sports world where you're conditioned to be tough and strong and kind of power through, they're still trying to fight that stigma, still trying to fight that if you ask for help or need support, that you're perceived as soft or weak. And it's actually the complete opposite. It's actually a courageous step, a very strength-based step to seek help. So that is probably still like one of the toughest things, just to kind of continue to chip away at that.
I figured I didn't want to lead with that as being like your biggest challenge, because I was like, I wonder if stigma is the biggest challenge. But I do have one follow-up question, is just what have you seen work? Like what's been like a breakthrough, and it doesn't have to be with a particular person, but just what kind of breakthroughs have you seen be effective where you're able to say, well, they walked in kind of like, I'm not doing this, and they walked away like, wow, thank you for this moment and this opportunity. I needed that.
You know what? Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's just a guy saying, hey, I just need to talk to you. And I think one of the ways that I try to reduce stigma is that all conversations don't have to be in my office, because some guys have flat out told me, I am not coming back there. So we'll sit in the cafeteria, we'll go take a walk out on the campus or something. And that, and sometimes it's just as simple as, dang, you know what? I didn't think about it like that. Like, okay, now I do feel better. Or I was just telling Dre, I said one of my like many, because you have to get the small victories. One of my small victories is a guy who told me, since I got there, I ain't never coming to your office. You're not going to analyze me. And literally stopped me and was like, yo, I think I'm gonna come back there and talk to you. Okay, like I got real excited. Now it may take him another month to actually have this conversation, but it's just the fact that for whatever reason, he's now comfortable and be like, okay, you know what, maybe I do need to talk to you. So I take those little victories and just hold on to them.
Hey, every victory matters. So kudos and congratulations to you. And I'll come to Sam and ask just that same question, as well as just, what's been one of the biggest challenge that you've encountered in your role?
I think it's that networking piece. Like for me, I've always developed relationships just kind of organically, spending time with people, being in the same place, and getting to know people that way. But what I've learned now is a lot of the people you only get one shot, or you have to find a way to make that connection. So especially during COVID, the job still had to get done. You still had to be able to understand who players were off the field. The only way to do that is through conversations and connecting and having a relationship with people who can kind of give you a true picture. And so for me, it was just learning how to be intentional with making an extra phone call, or finding some way to find that connection with people that you don't necessarily get to spend as much time with as you would like to.
I'd like to stay there just a little bit longer. And eventually this will lead into my next question about skills, because networking is an important skill. But just how did you find yourself like getting through that piece of, I want to make this connection with someone, and trying to figure out the right way to make that connection?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out. Like it's just because every person is different, right? And the way you approach every relationship is different. And I think just for me, the biggest thing is just to continue to be genuine. And I think as long as I'm myself, I think most people tend to just respect that. And so I think it's just not trying to reach outside of who I am and try to be who I think people want me to be. I just try to meet people where they are. And, any way I can help them, I try to help. And then that just tends to get reciprocated, and you end up with really good relationships that last beyond work.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that that's the key piece. I like that you said being genuine, and honestly, just being authentically who you are is the best way to build those relationships and those connections. So thank you for that. And while I also have you on screen, I'd love just to ask you, what skills are important to be successful in your role?
So first would be that interpersonal piece, and being able to build those relationships and being able to have people that you can talk to who are going to tell you the truth. The other piece is just being organized, being self-motivated. I'm only in the Chicago Bears facility probably 4 times a year for meetings that last, varying times. Most of the time I'm out on the road by myself. There's no boss standing over me. I have the work that I have to get done, and I have to prioritize and figure out how to schedule it myself. I take notes the way that works for me to take notes. There's no prescribed way. So just being self-motivated, being organized, having a plan, not procrastinating, because you can fall behind quickly and it'll start to really snowball. And then just being a good communicator, and being able to tell somebody else what you see, and be descriptive enough so that they can kind of see the picture as you talk about. that player or prospect.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like a lot of smart work, hard work, and a lot of dedication, and really just sitting down and saying, I'm going to be organized and I'm going to get the job done. So a lot of self-efficacy as well, it sounds like. So thank you so much for sharing that. Next, I'd like to kind of, Carla, and just ask the same thing, is just, what skills are needed to be successful in your role? I think that we heard just, a little bit of like how people are like, I'm not going back there to talk to Carla. And then like eventually they do. So, like what skills are needed, just to be successful?
I think Sam summed it up well. You've got to be yourself and be just kind of who you are. I think the one thing that working with anyone, but in particular with athletes, they're very good at kind of determining like who is really themselves, like who's real and who's not. And so you've got to show up and be consistent, because before people will come to you, they kind of got to watch and see how you move and you operate. So I show up as myself every day. I'd like to think that I'm pretty engaging and funny, and also try not to, just being able just to have conversations with people and just get to know people. And it's not a therapy thing. I always tell guys, I'm like, look, I just need to know where you got these J's from. I'm not trying to analyze you. I just want to try to get these J's, or, so talking to people about just general things so they understand that, oh, Carla's a regular person too. She likes shoes too. She's into art. She's into this. So just being able to kind of be myself and build those relationships, which then leads to, okay, now I feel a little bit more comfortable. I can possibly go talk to her about this. That is the key. That is the key, is about just showing up as yourself, being patient. Like I told you, that guy, I've known him for a few years, and it's at least been 2-3 years. And now you're just deciding you want to come talk to me. So being patient and recognizing that it's not about you. It's just about where people are in their journey. So to Sam's point about meeting people where they are, it's like, okay, cool. Take your time. Take your time. I'm here whenever. And just being genuine. And those are like skills, like those are like the intangibles. Those are not like quantifiable type of skills. But when you get to, I think one thing that I want people to know is that when you get to a certain level, or when you get to be in positions for these types of jobs, people have already understood that you have the skill set. Now it's like, are you a good fit? And what are those soft skills like? So I think a lot of times we do spend, yes, I'm independently licensed. Yes, I have 2 master's degrees. I have all of that. But if you don't have the soft skills, the personality traits, the intangibles, it's not going to work.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just have one quick question just to add, as an add-on to what you just said, is just, how did you learn how to build your soft skills? We talk about like creating a 30-second elevator pitch and things like that, but like, it's like, you talk a lot about like being genuine when you speak to people, asking people, like, where'd you get your J's from? How did you not take an L on the sneakers app? Like, how do you get to that place?
I think part of it is just me. If you hear my mom tell it, she always tells a story about, I knew everybody's name after the first couple of days of kindergarten, from all the teachers to the janitor. That's just kind of how I am. I talk to everybody. But I think it's also putting yourself in positions where you're forced to network. So going to networking events such as, the HBCU 2020 in-person events, going to places where you don't know anybody, sometimes just going to places by yourself where there might be an opportunity, because that also is a calculated risk, being able to put yourself in a situation where you're just kind of by yourself, you don't know anyone, and you have to start these conversations. So I think that forcing yourself to get out and network, and not maybe, yes, in the professional networking sense, but also reaching out to people on LinkedIn, reaching out to people who are in spaces where you're trying to just learn, just for a conversation, just to ask questions. That's how you also build those soft skills.
Thank you so much just for sharing that. And I like how a key component of that is just immersing yourself in an environment that you normally wouldn't be in and just putting yourself out there. So thank you for that. Next, I'd like to come to Andre and just ask the same thing, is just what skills are needed to be successful in your role?
I mean, Sam and Carla kind of already hit it, so I'll touch on it a little bit, but networking is key, and being able to connect with folks in the room. So like Carla said, her in with a player might be sneakers. I think you try to find you've never met someone and you're trying to find a way to break the ice, figure out a way to find that common conversation. Is it sneakers? Whatever the common interest is. Because once you break the ice, then the conversation usually flows. But networking, I can't stress how important that is. For example, this is my 20th season. Sam and I worked together with a previous team, right? What if Sam's boss, because he's also my boss, called Sam and said, hey, what do you think of Dre when you work with him back with the previous team? If I didn't connect with him or had a negative conversation or relationship, how do you think that will end, right? That was probably my one opportunity to get to wherever I was trying to go. And the networking didn't go the way it was supposed to. And as you find out in our profession, the more you do it and the longer you're doing it, that circle and network gets smaller and smaller. So I think it's super important that you try to network with the folks that are in your profession. But it's also important, whether it's at an HBC school or an internship, try to find who can help you get to where you're going, and then really use them as a mentor. I don't think we do that enough, because those are the folks that can help us get to where we're trying to go. And why try to do it on your own or rewrite it? They've probably gone through some of the things that you're trying to figure out now. So if they can give you the answers to the test, it's simply just asking, right? So I think we don't do that enough. Communication is a lost art now, just because of social media and all the other things that are at our fingertips. And having the ability to communicate, you're gonna stand out, because we all have degrees, we all have certain resources that we're all starting with, but how you're gonna separate yourself is really your skill set that you need to work on. And share. The more you can share what you're trying to do, you really never know who can help you get there. It may not be someone that's in your profession. It could be someone that's just listening in conversation that knows someone else that's in your profession that can one day get you there. So I think networking and just being able to communicate where you want to go is important.
Thank you so much just for shedding light on that. Oftentimes we forget that those relationships we build over time often lead into our next opportunities as well. I think that we heard a little bit of that with Carla, but even to your point, knowing that you work with Sam at a previous organization and are working together again, it's a telltale sign of how important it is not only to treat people right, but to also make sure that when you're building your network intentionally. And I love the mentorship component as well, because as you said, you can't do everything on your own. And it certainly helps to have someone who's been in your position before guide you along the way. So, thank you for that. Before I move into my last question, we always do a giveaway. So I'm going to ask Andre to pick a number between 1 and 200, and then I'll ask my question.
32.
Okay, 32. All right, so for $32, we'll cash out this to you. 2 of our panelists attended historically Black colleges and universities. Email to info@hbcu20x20.org, which HBCUs those were. So we'll be on the lookout for that. It's scrolling down the bottom. So thank you for that. But before we end our panel, I just have like that final question, and you all can go in the order that you feel most comfortable in. And it's just, what's the best piece of advice that you have ever received in your professional career?
Anyone?
Mm-hmm.
I would say put your head down and work, because you never know who's watching. Like, I'm here today because of an individual that I had no idea was watching me while I work. So it's super important. Don't just do it for the folks that you think are watching you or supervising you. You never know truly who can get you where you're trying to go one day. So and ask questions. I don't think the young individuals do that enough. Sometimes you're scared because you figure it might be a dumb question, but the ones that you don't ask, that's another opportunity that you're going to miss. So I think you just got to ask, because you'll never be able to get the answer if you don't.
Thank you for that.
That's a good one. For me, it's probably, when I was just starting out in the league, somebody pulled me aside and said, "Hey, this is the NFL. Everybody works hard. Like that's a prerequisite. If you want to excel, if you want to succeed, if you want to stay around this league for a long time, you've got to find a way to stand out. And hard work by itself is not going to be enough."
Thank you for sharing that as well. And Carla?
I think one thing that and this has been pretty recent, probably since I was in the NFL, since I've been in the NFL, know your why. Because a lot of times people want to work in the NFL or the NBA or MLB or something, or even Power 5 sports, because it looks real glamorous and you get the gear and all that. But that's not why you want to be in this, because if we have great jobs, we have, we get dope clothes, we get these great experiences, but like, Dre and I during the season are working 7 days a week. Sam spends a lot of time away from his family on the road. So why do you want to get into this space? Because as many great experiences as you have, you're also going to have to like sacrifice a little something too. So know why you want to be in it for anything, whether it's the pros, whether you want to go to med school, law school, get a PhD, whatever it is, just know why you really want to do it.
Thank you so much for that. So I want to take time just to thank Carla, thank Sam, thank Andre, just for participating in this conversation. I think that there were so many key takeaways, but the most important of that I kept hearing is just continue to be your genuine, authentic self. Build your network was something else I consistently heard throughout this conversation. And, if you all are continuing looking to build your network, figure out ways to connect with our panelists. There's always LinkedIn. I'm not sure if they feel comfortable connecting with you there. But other than that, we want to thank each of our panelists again. I wish that there was like a little sound where you can do like a little applause sound, but thank each and every one of you. If you all are looking for opportunities with the Chicago Bears, be sure to check out the link that is in the caption below. But other than that, I am signing off. Thank you again.
Thank you.